Welcome to Take It from the Iron Woman. My name is Susanne Müller, your host and the Iron Woman. This podcast is about empowering yourself and others to make real changes in the world. You will hear from everyday, smart, sophisticated, hip people like you and me. Not everybody has to be an Iron Woman to impress the world. Together, we will learn from the sports and business leaders how you can become a more successful person as an entrepreneur or a leader. It's one step at a time, one day at a time. Take your steps now. Take your big steps now. Join me on this journey to success. Hello and welcome to Take It from the Iron Woman. Today, we really have a special guest, Diane. Diane and I known each other from the podcast seminar on the Akimbo learning seminars. A very special person. We've probably met 10 times virtually. If we want to hear about her resume, it probably will take us 15 minutes because she has done so many things. But hello, Diane. Give us some insights. What are your highlights of your career that we can learn?
The highlights of my career. The highlights of my career are that I was a nurse attorney who turned a storyteller. I went from that into litigation consulting so that I could help plaintiff litigators, plaintiff trial attorneys tell the story of their clients. And over the course of 10 years, we managed to win millions of dollars for people who had been injured by the acts of negligence of others. It was a very rewarding place to be and a very difficult place to be because lawyers, by and large, are logical, analytical, A equals B, B equals C, whereas storytelling comes from a different part of the brain. And so trying to get them to let go and recognize that story is what is going to compel the jury, what is going to compel the judge. That's how we should be working this. And in between, I was a shepherd. I worked in a farm stand, in an organic farm. I was a beekeeper. So there's a lot of second acts in my life that have brought me to this place of being podcaster.
That's fantastic. And I'm an executive coach, and I always ask the question, what do you do when you don't work? And to me, it feels like this is when we get the best out of the people. And I know you did the Camino. So tell us, what is the Camino?
Oh my goodness, the Camino. It is so technically, for people that haven't heard of it, the Camino de Santiago is a route of pilgrimage that people have been walking since the medieval times. So if you read the Canterbury Tales, there are 3 characters, at least, who talk about walking it. There are many Caminos, but the Camino de Santiago de Compostela begins in Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, and it takes you up and over the Pyrenees Mountains and across the whole of Spain, and then you end up in Santiago, which is believed to be the place where the Apostle St. James Santiago is laid to rest in the cathedral. Once you've been to the cathedral and you attend the pilgrim mass and watch the big incense burners swing back and forth, then if you can, you make your way up the coast to Finisterre, which is the end of the earth. And there is a stone pillar, if you will, that has 0.0 kilometers on it. And that is the end of your journey. It is a place that calls people. I believe calls people. Many people go for different reasons. Some actually, it's a religious pilgrimage. For some, it's a spiritual place to be. Others go for the vino tinto and meeting other people. But I think for every person that goes, each person has a different reason why they're walking the Camino. And when I did it, it's 500 miles. Essentially from start to finish. So I did 5 weeks, 500 miles. I lost 15 pounds and I got to eat spaghetti, fried fish, and drink beer.
All those 5s. It seems like, and the 5 in numerology means change. So this is amazing. Yes, yeah. And then my question is always like, what is your determination, or what was the pivotal moment to say, now I'm going? Or is that a secret?
No, it's not at all. It's a splendid question. So I actually left from John Wayne Airport in California on the 17th of September and went from John Wayne to Newark to Madrid, got the train to Pamplona, took a bus all the way back to St. Jean, and then began. And this was 6 years ago now. And not a day goes by, I don't think, of the Camino and the lessons learned. What prompted it was looking back, it was a series of episodes. So I had seen in 2012 the movie The Way with Martin Sheen and his son Emilio Estevez. And they actually go across, well, the father, Martin Sheen, tracks what would have been his son's path along the Camino. And so I watched that and I thought that was really very nice. But then books started coming into my life, all about walking, all about pilgrimages. Somebody would send me a book. I'd be at the library and a book would fall off the shelf. And it became clear that this is something I was supposed to do. It was difficult because I had three kitties at the time. And so it would mean somebody had to actually move into my house for 6 weeks. So finding somebody, figuring out what to pack, how to do it. And yet, the minute I said that I was going to do this, it all fell together. And I got my ticket and I found somebody to house it for me. And on the day I was supposed to leave, the plane took off and I was on it.
That's a very amazing story. I like when those books fall off the shelf and they speak to you. That's really the calling, and then you have to go. I think that's important.
You have to go. Yes.
You have to go. It's an invitation. It's not you have to go, you get to go.
Exactly. You're being called on some sort of adventure that's going to turn your life upside down and backward. It's never going to be the same. And I probably could have said, no, I can't afford it on 27 different levels. I'm not going to go. And yet, as you probably know, through your work, through your running, through your mountain climbing, when something like that shows up in your life, you do it. You do it.
And sometimes we have those bucket lists, and it's funny when you said it was 6 years ago. Actually, when I went to Kilimanjaro, it was exactly 6 years ago. So that's an interesting time for us, probably. Tell me a little bit on what did you pack? This is an interesting question because it feels like when we travel, we have like 2 suitcases and a backpack and a computer. But in the Camino, when you say 5 weeks, 500 miles, you cannot pack everything that you have, that you own.
No, you can't. You're supposed to take no more than 10% of your body weight. And that includes everything. That includes the weight of your pack. That includes your 1 or 2 water bottles with water in them. There's a lot on the internet about what to pack and what not to pack. I actually overpacked. And by the time I got to St. Jean, I had to pack up a box. And for €40, I got to send it back to the United States. I was lucky because I went to REI. They are very familiar with people that walk Camino. What was important to me was a sleeping bag because I was going to be in albergues. You're not really sure about the bed bug situation. So having a sleeping bag was important. Having a silk liner inside was important because of the question about the bed bugs. And socks. I had 3 changes of socks. I only had 2 pair of walking pants. I would walk all day in one, and then once I got to where I was going and I would shower, I would change into the clean one. I probably only took 3 shirts with me and did the same thing again. Wherever you go, you've got places to shower and do your laundry. But I find that we need a lot less than we think. There are places to buy things if you really, really need them. Some of the albergues have lost and found bins. So if there's something that you need, go through the lost and found bin. You're bound to find it in there. Letting go of what you think you need was the most important. And I remember one picture I took of all my clothes were on a clothesline. And there was, 1 set of unders, there was 1 shirt, there was 1 pair of pants. That's all I had. And it was remarkably freeing.
Yes.
Because you didn't have to worry about anything. You just had what you had and you made do is important because I was there through October and it was getting very cold. And so you learn how to layer everything up, button up things, and you put your little watch cap on your head and you go out. So you might not have all the gear, but you've got enough to keep warm. The more you walk, the warmer you get, as the Iron Woman would know.
That's true. And I like the picture of your belongings. We only probably need 1 set of belongings when we come back or before the trip. We look and I need this, I need this. And then literally you only need one set or two, probably one to wear. And I always call it wash and wear. So one to wash and one to wear. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I made the mistake of taking a camera with me, but I left the charger at home. So after a while it died. And I carried that weight around with me when I didn't need it, but a cell phone is perfect for taking pictures. You don't need a camera.
No.
And anything that you need, your passport, of course, you wear that in a little pouch around your neck.
Mm-hmm.
I had a guidebook because one came out that was absolutely wonderful and I wanted to carry that with me. I did add to my pack by bringing a book of poetry by David White. He had walked the Camino and he had written a book of poetry about it. And it was important for me to have that. Just to keep me going. The last thing that was added, when you walk the Camino, you'll come across the Cruz de Ferro, and it's an iron cross. It's been there since the beginning of time. There's a great big mound of rocks that you can climb up. It's taller, it's almost as tall as a house. And the weight of all those rocks over centuries is down into the ground. The idea is that you're supposed to take a rock that you've carried on the Camino and throw it on the pile and get rid of something. Get rid of your fear of poverty, get rid of whatever. I made mention of this to people as I was preparing. And when I set out, I had 2 pounds of rocks that people had given me to throw on the Cruz de Ferro for them. So by the time I got there, of course, I threw them one at a time and remembered each person and what they wanted me to release for them. But nothing felt so good as getting rid of 2 pounds of rocks.
Just the way to get rid
Just
of
the
wow.
weight, yeah.
When in the journey was that, when you threw those rocks? I hope at the very beginning.
No, it's about 2/3 of the way through. Yeah, it's getting closer to the end. But they weren't big rocks. They were smaller things, bigger than a pebble, but smaller than a boulder. But they still all weighed together 2 pounds.
In a way, listening to you, it almost feels like those people were with you. You were not alone on this. Was there ever a moment where you were alone or felt alone?
Oh, yes. There were times where I stomped around, made furious gestures, self-pity, pity party, because there's nothing that can prepare you for the Camino. You can walk ahead of time and break in your boots. You can get your gear together, walk around with your backpack or your mochila, they call it, be comfortable in that. In terms of what prepares you to actually be walking 10, 15, 18 miles a day in all kinds of weather, sleeping in dorms that might have 40 people in them in bunk beds, all sorts of people. I met people from 27 different countries. You're just in the middle of it until your heart and your head and your body sync together. You're going to be miserable. And it just takes the time of walking for that to happen. I went alone, so I was a stoy solo, but you meet people along the way. The aloneness part, that's your head. And that is a gift of being able to look at your life, how you got to this point, what you want to let go of that doesn't serve you anymore. There were times I remember walking along with the 4-year-old version of myself and talking to her and having her talk to me. So to have, as you say, the people coming along with me whose rocks I carried, dear ones, people who were dear to me, gave me ahead of time a note card or a little letter. And I tucked each of those into various pages of the David White book. So that was a great comfort. At a point in the walk, you can sit down and read something and realize there are people praying for you. There was a convent we stopped at, and each pilgrim was given a little paper star in Estrella to guide them. And the nuns that were handing them out said, this is to remind you that we're all here and we're praying for you along the way. And just having something like that, knowing that for as many thousands of pilgrims as walk the Camino, you're being prayed for. That's encouraging.
That's so beautiful.
It's life-saving. Yes. And I still have the scar.
And I also think you can look up into the sky and see many more stars. Those nuns are there for you and praying for you. And I like when you say you think every single day on the Camino. I mean, it was 5 weeks, but such a pivotal moment in your life. Nobody can take that away. I think that's also something. It's yours. You did it. And we said, if you did it, you can brag about it.
That's
Or
right.
it's not bragging, right? If you did it, it's not bragging.
No, I'm celebrating it. And of all the things that I've ever done in my life, it is the one thing that I hold up and say, this means the absolute most to me, that I was able to do this, actually able to walk that far and live through those circumstances and learn the lessons. I felt badly because I wasn't having these big miraculous moments on the Camino that other people had. What they would say is, when you go back and you live Camino, back where you live, that's when you're going to begin to understand. That's when it's going to appear to you.
Transformations or miracles, they can happen anytime. Sometimes we feel like it has to happen on that Camino and people are waiting and nothing is happening because we're waiting too much. There might be another incident when you're already at home and you're like, this is what I relive now after the Camino, and I'm grateful and I can relate to something different.
Absolutely. Yep. That's the way it works.
That's the way it works. Any miracle can happen with a little estrella, with a little star. Yes. Thank you so much, Diane, for sharing your Camino. And I know everybody is on a Camino. A Camino means a way. We all know the journey is more important than the destination. So thank you so much for your experience.
You're welcome, and I wish you buen camino.
Thank you, buen camino. There's much to learn from walking the Camino. Thank you, Diane. Actually, we have the luxury to hear more from her. Next week, we hear there is always a yellow arrow, some more magical. Buen camino, where is your Camino? Take it from the Ein woman. Like our podcast and write a review. Thank you very much.